What is up, everyone? My name is Joseph and welcome back to another Casually Competitive MTG video. In this video, we're going to go over some of our favorite cards from Commander 2020 and from Ikoria. At the time of recording this, the spoilers have pretty much all been released, so we went through it since we were planning on doing an Ikoria and a C20 Commander gameplay video and decided to go through some of the cards and felt like there was enough of them to talk about, so we decided to put them in a list and present you with our 5 favorite cards from both Ikoria and from C20, with a few honorable mentions thrown in there. Before we get into the list, I do want to let you know that if you're interested in watching some gameplay using Commander 20 cards and legendaries, as well as Ikoria legendaries, we will be taking this Friday tonight, if you're watching this video on the day of release, and next Friday to play through these games to record gameplay for the videos. So if you want to watch them live before they come out on YouTube, we will be streaming these games over twitch.tv/casuallycompetitivemtg, and we've been streaming fairly consistently twice a week over the quarantine period. So if you're interested in just some live EDH gameplay, go and check out the Twitch channel. As far as other promotions go, we have a Patreon with some updated tiers to announce in the very near future, as well as a Twitter, a Discord, a TCG affiliate link in the description if you're looking at buying cards anytime soon. And as a sneak peek, if you want to sign up to be the first to know when our merch releases next Friday on April 17th, there's a link in the description for our website, as well as a Kickstarter link for how our Playmats will be released. So check those out in the description if you're interested. That all being said, let's get into our 5 favorite cards for Commander 2020. Before we get into the list, I want to let you know that these are in no particular order, and we're not saying that these are the 5 best cards from this set, just the 5 that we find the most interesting and that we're personally the most excited for, and some of them may be very strong, but we're not saying that these are the 5 best cards, just our personal top 5 as a group and what we're most looking forward to. All right, enough disclaimers, let's get into the list. The first entry in this list is the Commander pairing Ukkima, Stalking Shadow, and Kazur, Ruthless Stalker. I know it's 2 cards, but they'll be played together, so we decided to have them as one entry. So why did this creature pairing attract our attention? Well, first off, they're in incredibly relevant colors. Being in black, green, and blue means they have access to fantastic tutors, great ramp, and excellent control, so they really can handle all parts of the game while working towards some very consistent and well-known meta strategies with Demonic Consultation, as well as a Flash Hulk line that goes into Demonic Consultation, so it's going to be very strong both in their colors and in the effect, because one of these commanders, Ukkima, serves as an outlet for infinite food chain mana. So if you're able to generate infinite mana with Food Chain using a Mist Hollow Griffin, you're able to continually cast and exile Ukkima to deal damage to each of your opponents every time it leaves the battlefield. Now, a nice thing about Food Chain and being in blue is that there's a lot of good supporting cards for Food Chain with Manipulate Fate, Mist Hollow Griffin, and of course you have Eternal Scourge. So with cards being easily tutored and exiled with these colors, the fact that you have an outlet right in your command zone is incredibly relevant, and I expect these commanders to be very strong on the higher powered side of EDH. The next card on our list is another legendary creature. I know, big shock in a Commander 20 set, but the next entry is Zaxara the Exemplary. What we like about this card is, again, it's in incredibly good colors, being in black, green, and blue. However, my personal favorite part of it is the fact that even though it is in black and blue, it has a lot of other combos you can do with it that don't involve Demonic Consultation and Thassa's Oracle. I know, it's crazy, but it is possible. With the fact that this commander is a 2-mana dork, it combos with cards like Freed from the Rielle or Penim's Aura to generate infinite mana. And the fact that half of your combo is in the command zone means you don't have to search for it. You only have to search for that enchantment piece, and since you're in black, it's pretty easy to tutor up cards. Now, you will still need some type of outlet in terms of like a Walking Ballista or an X spell to finish off your opponents, but the fact that you have half of an already efficient combo in the command zone is pretty cool. He's also just great value. A 4-mana dork that taps for 2 isn't insanely efficient, but the fact that it's in your command zone means you have access to it all game, so it can be very, very strong, and I think it's going to be relatively interesting. While it won't be at the top tier in terms of commanders, it can be built to be fairly powerful and pretty exciting. The next card we're excited about is another commander pairing, and the commanders are Braylon Skyshark Rider and Shabraz the Skyshark. So what caught our attention about these commanders? Well, first off, the art, and the fact that you have a flying shark in your command zone is initially a little interesting, and it kind of sparked our attention. The more we looked into it, there were quite a few things that were pretty nice about this commander pairing. The first thing is the colors are pretty good. You're in decent control colors, which personally is something I'm a big fan of, and you have a lot of relevant value pieces and tutors with those 3 colors. That being said, what can this commander do that other commanders can't? Well, actually, what I like about this commander is not that it does something new, but it does something that's existing, but it does it in a little bit of a different way. With Braylon specifically, you can combo with Curiosity in a very similar way that Niv Mizzet Perun can. You can enchant Braylon with Curiosity, and now every time you discard a card, not only does it trigger Braylon's ability to put a +1/+1 counter on it and deal a damage, it also lets you draw a card. So, with that being said, if you have 8 cards in your hand and you move to your end step to discard, you have yourself an infinite loop. And while it is a little bit harder to assemble than the Niv Mizzet Curiosity combo is, there are some benefits to using this commander pairing that I've found. First off, you have white in your color identity, which means you have an increase in tutors and supporting cards compared to just Izzet. Next, which is very important, Braylon's easier to cast than Niv Mizzet. You don't need 6 colored mana. You need 3 colorless and a red, and that's much easier to come by. And finally, you have a flying shark in your command zone, which thematically is just kind of cool, I think. Anyway, these commanders can combo fairly fast and reliably, and honestly, at this higher power tier of EDH, what more could you ask for? For entries number 4 and 5, I'm going to group the cards together. However, they're not commander pairings, so I will treat them as separate entries since they are completely different cards. They just are a little bit similar. Those cards are Fierce Guardianship and Deflecting Swat. These are the red and the blue spells of the you can cast the spell for free if you own your commander cycle. Both of them are very strong for what they do, and I think they'll see quite a bit of play, not only in what I like to consider this casually competitive meta where we play some unoptimal things, but I think they'll see some competitive play as well. Talking about Fierce Guardianship, at worst, this card is just a negate for 1 extra colorless mana, and at best, it's a better Force of Negation. I say better because you don't give yourself card disadvantage by having to exile a spell, and you're able to cast it for free on your turn, so it's got a very high ceiling, and I think it's going to be very efficient to slot in a lot of control decks, especially those that like playing their commander like Curiosity Control or Kess. Really anything that reliably has their commander on the battlefield is going to get insane value off of Fierce Guardianship. Similarly, Deflecting Swat is going to be incredibly good in a lot of decks, but primarily non-blue decks, I feel. It's a card that has a chance to be cast for free that can change the targets of a spell or ability. And I think that ability part is going to be pretty relevant, but even without that ability part added on, this still is a very good way to protect your commander if you're a non-blue from a single target removal spell. A good way to get around Abrupt Decay, since you're not countering it, you're changing the target, and it can also change the targets of abilities. This may be a little less relevant, but something like changing the target of a Goblin Sharpshooter activation, or something like an Aetherflux activation, or something like a Dak Faden activation. You can really mess with someone's plans by just changing their abilities targets, because chances are they're not going to be expecting it. So again, Deflecting Swat I think will see a lot of play in a lot of non-blue decks, and it might sneak its way into some decks that run blue as well as that utility piece that can just be a free counter spell or change target spell. So that all being said, we're really excited about getting some more interaction for the table and some free interaction at that. So we've talked about our 5 picks for our favorite cards coming out in the Commander 2020 sets, but we do have a few honorable mentions which we thought were interesting cards but just slightly missed the cut for us personally. And these cards are Cryptic Trilobite and the commander pairing Yannick Scavenging Sentinel and Nakira Lair Scavenger. We didn't think they were strong or universal enough to be our favorite, but they were interesting enough for us to mention during this honorable mention section. Cryptic Trilobite is a cool little card that helps combo with some commanders that may not see a ton of play, like Gave Guru of Spores or Marath Will of the Wild. Being able to manipulate counters and generate mana off of them is exactly what those decks are trying to do, so a piece that helps out some maybe lesser played combos I think is fairly interesting, and I'm glad to see it printed. The commander pairing Yannick and Nakira, again, I also think are interesting because I like these non-blue commanders that try to just rush out value, and I think this commander pairing can do it pretty well. With card draw on the commander, and with combo lines available such as Food Chain and leaving the battlefield manipulation, I feel like there could be some really spicy decks built around these commanders, and you may just see one here on the channel in the very near future. These are the kind of decks that I love seeing pop off because they're different, they don't run blue, and they usually combo in some type of spicy way. So I think these commanders are definitely ones to keep your eyes on because I know I will be. So moving away from the Commander 20 cards, let's talk about our favorite cards from the Ikoria set. Again, these aren't in any particular order, but let's get started. The first entry to this list is Rielle the Everise. This legendary creature, if you're playing it as your commander, is basically everything that you want to do as an Izzet deck. It's a low CMC commander that gives you insane value off of cards that force you to discard, like Frantic Search or Tolarian Winds for instant speed spells, or spells like Burning Inquiry, Faithless Looting, any Wheel, Careful Study, all of the looting effects on the red spells, and any creature that lets you loot. All of these just become insanely valuable and just give you so much card draw, always keeping cards in your hand and always giving you a chance to storm off. Rielle lets you power through your deck so incredibly fast that the lack of tutors in Izzet doesn't really matter too much. I think this will be a really cool deck, especially in the color pairing that it is. As an Izzet fanboy, I'm really excited to see what people make around this commander, and I'm really excited to see it in action. Our second entry is another legendary creature, Kinnan Bonder Prodigy. Now, I know everyone was just thinking that Simic really needed more insane value and really good cards, and man, did this card deliver. Kinnan is in great colors for both ramp and control, it being in Simic, and the ability tacked onto the card really does a lot to benefit those archetypes. Kinnan makes it so that anytime you tap a non-land permanent for mana, it produces one extra of any type that could produce. This makes it so cards like Basalt Monolith generate infinite mana just naturally, and simple rainbow dorks like Birds of Paradise and Bloomtender go infinite with cards like Freed from the Rielle. Not only does it make generating infinite mana fairly easy in EDH, but it also just gives these mana dorks so much extra value and so much extra ramp. Now, if all that value on a 2 CMC creature wasn't enough, it also has an ability that lets you sink infinite mana to find non-human creatures like, let's say Thrasios, for example, who's slotted into your 99, and now that gives you another way to dump your infinite mana. So there's a lot of cool lines that you can do with this commander, and this commander is just going to be very powerful, and it's going to make its way, I think, into a lot of higher powered decks that run these colors. Moving away from the legendary creatures for the rest of these entries, let's talk about entry number 3, Drannith Magistrate. Now, if you've been around the channel for any length of time, you know that we aren't really shy about stacks pieces in our decks, so cards like Drannith Magistrate are going to be perfect. It's a card that not only shuts off really good value engines like Underworld Breach, Yawgmoth Will, or any Future Sight type effect, but it also stops people from playing their commander asymmetrically. Not only that, but it also swings for and blocks Tymna if needed, all for 2 mana. This card is very powerful and is going to do really well in a lot of decks that run white. Personally, I'm really excited for it because I love to play Staxian Hate Bear type effects, and this will slot in perfectly to many of my decks. I have seen a concern that this card may see a ban due to the fact that it shuts off commanders being cast, and that may be unfun to play against, but it didn't get banned on release like Lutri did, and based on the reactions that I've seen from people who are in the Commander Advisory group, I don't think this card will see a ban anytime soon. Yes, it's strong, and yes, it shuts off a lot of things, and I could go on for a long time on this topic, but I don't think it warrants a ban yet. We haven't seen it in play, so we don't know how bad it will affect tables, but very similarly to Mass Land Destruction, I feel like this will be a card that is just asked to not be played in certain tables depending on the level of interaction they play and the power level of that table. I think this will kind of slot in there, and personally, I hope I'm right, and I hope it does remain unbanned because this card is one that I see myself playing a lot and my play group playing a lot, and I'm really looking forward to both playing this card and playing against this card. Next up on this list, we have a 2-mana Golgari creature named Fiend Artisan. This card was spoiled fairly early on, and immediately it caught our attention. Not only is this creature cheap and relatively easy to cast if you're in black and green, but its effect is really strong. The tap effect on this creature essentially lets you turn a mana dork into any creature in your library, assuming you have the mana to cast it. There is a downside to only being able to be activated at sorcery speed. However, the benefit of being able to essentially pay for and tutor up any creature in your library to the battlefield is super strong. Being able to pay 3 mana, sacrifice a mana dork, and search up a Grand Abolisher right to the battlefield at the beginning of your combo turn is a situation that is definitely not irrelevant. And something that's really nice about this process is that Grand Abolisher can't be countered because you're just putting it onto the battlefield. So now they either need a Stifle effect or they have to regret not countering the Fiend Artisan. Overall, that's just a really good situation for the controller of the Fiend to be in. Now this card may not make its way into every deck that runs black and green, but for decks that are built for it and built around it and built to utilize its effect, this creature is definitely going to pull its weight and be worth the slot. And finally, rounding out the list, we have the Sorcery of One Mind. I will say that initially, this card didn't get any of us too excited due to the meta that we play in. This card is a 3 mana draw 2 at sorcery speed and has the chance to cost 1 blue mana. Yes, it works if both Tymna and Thrasios are on the battlefield, but that isn't something that's super relevant for our play group. However, the more we checked into the creature types of the cards that we play, the more relevant that it seemed to become. Many partner pairings that we do play, like Tymna and Ikra Shidiki, Thrasios and Bruce Tarl, Tymna and Krom, and even the new Jeskai commanders Braylon and Shabraz, all activate this effect. Outside of partner commanders, an example of a deck that can still turn it online easily is my Hullen deck. This deck runs a lot of mana dorks that are not humans and a commander that is a human. I'm not entirely sure if I'll be running this card yet, but the option is there and it's not off the table. Just in general though, while this might not make it into every blue deck as a staple blue cantrip, this card is still going to be a powerhouse for card advantage in decks that can reliably turn it online. With a floor of 3 mana draw 2 cards and a ceiling of 1 mana draw 2 cards, this card has a lot of potential for sure. Now with our 5 favorite Ikoria cards out of the way, let's go over some honorable mentions and some cards that we wanted to mention that we're excited about, but didn't quite make the cut as our 5 favorite. The first card I want to talk about is Zirda the Dawnmaker. This legendary fox is essentially a 3 mana training grounds that's a little bit better than a training grounds actually, in Boros, and it's something that has a lot of uses and may even see some play. As a commander, this card allows for a few 2-card infinite mana engines with cards like Assault Monolith and Grim Monolith with your commander on the battlefield, and sure, you will still need some Expel as an outlet to win the game, but having half of a 2-card combo in the command zone in Boros is something that feels much stronger than other Boros options. I'm not going to talk about the companion portion of this too much because in general I think companion doesn't synergize super well with commander, or at least the high powered tier of decks, but Zirda does provide some interesting restrictions that may be able to work with EDH compared to some other companion restrictions that are just unreasonable. In general, I know I'm personally excited for this because I love these kind of fringe color or fringe combo commanders like this or Heliod, the Sun Crowned, and I'm really excited to see what people can do with Zirda, and I'm really excited to see it in action. And finally, the last honorable mention and the last card we'll be talking about today is Sea Dasher Octopus. Now, there's not much to say about this card, and I'm not even necessarily saying it's a great card, but it is kind of a cute combat trick. Turning an unblocked mana dork into a fairly good value engine for 2 mana at instant speed is something that could slot its way into a few decks, and we've been talking about and we're a little bit interested in. It doesn't look like it will be incredibly optimal to slot in most decks, but the combat trick is still fairly well priced in terms of CMC for what it does, and I feel like it can turn a mana dork into a slightly worse Occam adversary in blue. It's not great, but we thought it was worth an honorable mention slot because it's something that we found interesting, and it is something that we are personally excited for. Mutate in general is going to bring with it some cool interactions, and I'm excited to see what it can do, and this is an example of a card that might see its way into some higher powered EDH play. That being said, those are the 10 cards we are excited for Commander 2020 and for Ikoria, with some honorable mentions thrown in, so we hope you enjoyed this little discussion. In general, we want to do these videos as more of a podcast style. However, since we are all in quarantine and we're not really able to meet up together, this is the best we could do, and we hope you still enjoyed it. That being said, that is all we have for this video. We hope you had a good time. We hope you're excited for Commander 2020 and Ikoria when it does finally release. That being said, that's all we have for this video. I am Joseph, this is Casually Competitive, and we will see you next time.